"Ma'am, kindly step back. First class isn't for people like you." Captain Sarah Miller's voice cut through the cabin like a razor. No hesitation, no apology. She waved Maya toward the back, like shooing away a stain from her elite world. "You'll need to verify your priority status, or switch to economy." A few passengers glanced over, uncertain whether to intervene. Richard White, a white man in his 50s with slicked-back hair and a gleaming silver watch, coldly blocked Maya's path with his roller bag. "This area isn't open to just anyone," he sneered. What none of them realized was that the woman they had humiliated moments ago was Dr. Maya Johnson, the true owner of this jet, poised to overturn the system in the next 5 fateful minutes. Dr. Maya Johnson, a petite black CEO who moved with utter confidence, appeared at the cabin entrance. Her attire was surprisingly modest: a wrinkled light gray blouse, classic navy slacks, and worn loafers free of any logo. In her hand was an ordinary, unbranded boarding pass bearing no name that screamed billion-dollar conglomerate founder. But Maya showed no hesitation. She strode past the steward's scrutinizing stares and made a beeline for the first-row window seat, where all eyes in the cabin seemed to converge. Captain Sarah Miller, the plane's commander, emerged from the cockpit. A white woman in her 40s with her blonde hair tied tightly into a bun, her uniform immaculate, and her chin held high with arrogance, she didn't offer a courtesy smile or greet the newcomer like any seasoned pilot would. Sarah took in Maya from head to toe, eyeing a loose button, the hem of her slacks slightly off, the scratch on her carry-on, then held out her hand, her words dripping with contempt. "First class isn't for people like you." The cabin fell silent. A middle-aged couple reading magazines froze. 2 young people texting nearby looked up, brows raised. No one dared speak, but the discomfort and whispers were obvious on every face. Sarah waved toward economy without so much as a polite nod. "Boarding pass, please. If you can't prove priority status, you'll need to move to a coach seat." Maya paused only briefly. Her gaze never wavered. She handed over the ticket. Sarah took it with 2 fingertips, as if afraid of a single speck of dust, skimmed it once, then snapped it back, lips pressed into a thin line. "Unverified." Sarah's words were like a cold blade, pure refusal, prejudice, and the pettiness of someone guarding the gates to high society. Across the aisle, Richard White, well-dressed in a sleek gray vest, silver watch glinting, didn't bother to hide his disdain. He shoved Maya's roller bag aside and claimed the overhead bin himself. Leaning toward her, his voice loud enough for the whole cabin to hear, he said, "Let's keep this area clear." His gaze aimed to erase Maya's very presence from first class. A few passengers behind him exchanged mocking smiles. Flight attendant Emma nearby curled her lip in silent agreement. The collective stares and murmurs formed an invisible wall that isolated Maya the moment she dared step into their exclusive realm. Amid all those eyes, Maya inhaled deeply, knuckles tightening on her bag's handle. She lifted her chin and stared directly at Sarah, unyielding, unbowed. The 5-minute battle was about to begin, under the harsh gold light of privilege and the hidden shadows of bias. The cabin seemed to freeze at Sarah's wave. Keeping her expression utterly impassive, Captain Sarah Miller flipped through the passenger manifest on her tablet. Her gaze never returned to Maya, but her voice carried loud enough for everyone to hear. "You need to verify your priority status or move to economy. We only accommodate confirmed first-class passengers here." That razor-sharp tone wasn't a polite request. It was a sentence handed down before Maya even had a chance to defend herself. The atmosphere in first class grew uncomfortably heavy. Passengers, who'd been absorbed in work emails or phone screens, all paused. turning their eyes toward Maya, some curious, some wary, and others openly enjoying this little spectacle before takeoff. Maya felt every stare. A black woman dressed plainly, hair pulled back, carrying no designer bag or fancy watch, glaringly out of place among polished suits, crocodile leather handbags, and luxury fragrances. To her left, a middle-aged woman hugged her purse closer, eyes narrowed in distrust. A young man in a black vest and thick glasses shook his head at his girlfriend, whispering something Maya couldn't, and didn't want to, decipher. Meanwhile, Richard White seemed to relish the moment. He sneered, leaned back in his seat, drumming his fingers on the tray table, surveying Maya with the smug satisfaction of someone watching an interloper get the boot. Seizing the chance, he leaned toward the middle-aged man beside him and spoke in a low voice, deliberately loud enough for Maya to hear. "These days, we keep getting subpar guests. With Zenith so lax, we'll lose all our prestige soon enough." As if on cue, Sarah stepped one pace closer to Maya, locking eyes with her in a steel-cold stare. "I'll say it again. Either you prove your priority status, or I'll have security escort you to economy. These are the rules. I'm just doing my job." Her words weren't aimed only at Maya. They sent an unspoken warning to every passenger. Don't even think about stepping in to help. Nobody spoke up. Everyone either looked away or deliberately avoided Maya's eyes, leaving her alone before an invisible wall of isolation and prejudice. At the far end of the cabin, Ethan Collins, a well-known Asian American travel blogger famous for his posts on equality and travel experiences, quietly pulled out his phone. He didn't rush. He watched carefully. Richard's smug grin, Sarah's posture, even the stiff mannerisms of the other flight attendants as they avoided eye contact with Maya. Ethan knew that a single moment in this closed cabin could reflect centuries of injustice outside. He opened his camera app, gripped his phone steady to capture every expression. He noticed Maya's face, not fear or confusion, but a calm endurance tinged with silent defiance. It was the look of someone who'd lived amid prejudice all her life and refused to bow her head. Though the cabin felt eerily still, beneath the surface swirled currents of bias. That invisible noose tightened around Maya not with words, but with sideways glances, head shakes, smirks, and the silent collusion of those too afraid, or too unwilling, to break the injustice. Yet, through it all, Maya stood tall, her hand brushing the handle of her bag, eyes unwavering as she stared back at Sarah, a quiet reminder to herself she would not yield, not 1 inch. Amid that circle of prejudice, Maya refused to bow her head. She quietly set her roller bag at her feet and pulled out her boarding pass, a thin, unremarkable card, with no gold strip or bold priority label like every other first-class ticket. It was part of a covert experiment known only to Maya and a small team at Zenith's headquarters. She herself had overseen the creation of these plain passes, just to see firsthand how the service system would treat an unqualified passenger. Maya held the card out to Sarah, her hand steady and sure. Sarah took it with 2 fingertips, like something filthy, and glanced at Maya with icy disdain before looking down at her tablet. A flick of her eyes, no barcode scan, no system lookup. She tossed the card back to Maya and spoke through clenched teeth, each word driving like a nail into the cabin floor. "Unverified. You're not in the priority system. I'm ordering you to leave this seat immediately. If you don't comply, I'll call security to escort you to economy." The declaration reverberated through the cabin. Instead of sympathy, most passengers fell silent, as though they agreed with her cold decree. A few even pressed their lips together in satisfaction, thinking at last the order of things had been restored, and there was no room for any blemish on first-class privilege. Across from her, Richard White reveled in the exclusion like a cruel pastime. He stared at Maya as if she were trash in a crystal-gilded foyer, smirked, tapped his silver watch for emphasis, and leaned toward the man next to him to add in a spiteful whisper, "At this rate, Zenith won't even know who real VIPs are anymore." Sarah kept her eyes locked on Maya, her tone growing colder, as if carrying out an unpleasant duty she was determined to see through. "We cannot allow anyone unverified to sit here. If you don't leave right now, I will request security assistance." In the back of the cabin, Ethan Collins hit record, capturing Maya standing alone against that cold, closed system. On his phone, he began composing his first tweet, each keystroke a scalpel slicing through the false veneer. Zenith crew flags black woman as non-priority. No verification, just threat of removal. It's 2025, and this still happens. Within seconds, that tweet lit up the timelines of thousands of his followers. Hashtags like discrimination, aviation bias, and Zenith Aerospace started spreading like wildfire. Maya watched it all with a calm exterior masking the storm inside. She knew every move Sarah made, from her indifferent attitude to the deliberate failure to verify, to the way she raised her voice in front of the passengers, was living proof of what Maya had long suspected. Discrimination wasn't just personal, it was built into a system defended by unwritten rules. With each passing second, the pressure on Maya mounted, but she stood her ground. Her hand tightened on her bag's handle, as her eyes flicked back to Ethan at the rear of the cabin, the only person brave enough to point a lens at the truth. And Sarah, after each pointed reminder of the rules, would glance toward Richard and the other passengers as if seeking their approval for her actions. She didn't notice that every small detail was being recorded by Ethan's camera and transcribed into Maya's secret files. In just moments, this woman, unknown to the crew, would change not only their fate, but the fate of the entire system they so proudly upheld. The first-class cabin felt like it had frozen solid under Sarah's hand wave. Keeping her face blank, Sarah flipped through the passenger list on her tablet. Eyes never leaving the screen, yet her voice rang out loud enough for everyone to hear. "You need to reconfirm your priority status or move to economy. This section is strictly for verified passengers." That blade-sharp tone wasn't a suggestion. It was a verdict rendered before Maya had any chance to speak. The air in the first class felt oppressively dense. Passengers who'd been buried in work emails or scrolling their phones all paused, turning their heavy scrutiny toward Maya. Curiosity, suspicion, and even a few gleeful smirks flickering over their faces, as if they'd settled in for a little entertainment before takeoff. Maya sensed every look, a black woman in simple clothes, hair pulled back, without a designer bag or expensive watch, utterly out of place among polished suits, crocodile skin handbags, and luxury scents. In the row opposite, a middle-aged woman hugged her purse tighter, eyes narrowed in doubt. A young man in a black vest and thick-rimmed glasses shook his head at his girlfriend, whispering something Maya didn't bother to decipher. Richard White soaked up the exclusion like a spectator at a show. He leaned back, tapped the tray table with a pleased grin, then leaned to his neighbor and sneered loudly enough for Maya to hear. "We've been getting a lot of substandard guests lately. With Zenith this lax, they're going to ruin their reputation." Sarah took a step closer to Maya, her gaze steel-cold as she delivered her ultimatum. "I'll say it one more time. Either you prove your priority status or I'll report this violation and have security escort you to economy. That's the policy. I'm just enforcing it." Her words weren't just directed at Maya. They were a warning to the entire cabin. Don't even think about helping." Nobody spoke up. Everyone averted their eyes or pretended Maya didn't exist, leaving her alone against an invisible wall of isolation and prejudice. At the back, Ethan Collins, an Asian-American travel blogger known for championing equality, quietly turned on his camera. He watched Maya stand firm like a mountain in a storm of bias, then tapped out his second tweet, this time with a photo of Sarah blocking Maya at the first-class row. No ID check, just outright bias. Woman denied first-class minutes before takeoff. "Justice, where are you?" Within a minute, Ethan's phone buzzed with hundreds of retweets and comments. Hashtags like #Justice for Maya, #Zenith Discrimination, and #Real First Class began trending. Influencers in the Black community, women's rights advocates, and even digital news outlets jumped in. Unaware that every move she made was now under public scrutiny, Sarah continued her cold procedure, exchanging code words with colleagues that only insiders would get. She turned on Maya once more, her tone both stern and menacing. "This is your final warning. Leave this area now, or I will file an official violation report." Every time Sarah emphasized violation or report, it was a chilling reminder to the cabin: rules favor the powerful, and order belongs to those who meet the standard. Richard White kept snapping photos of Maya with his phone, pretending to text, but really capturing evidence for his private chat group. Look who thinks she can buy her way in. For people like him, excluding someone unworthy was a pastime that reinforced their sense of privileged security. Meanwhile, lead flight attendant Emma Walsh stood by in silence, nodding in approval and jotting notes on her tablet. Unauthorized passenger, refused to comply. Security may be needed. Not a single note mentioned actually verifying Maya's credentials or performing a proper ID check. Every glance from Richard, every gesture from Emma, and each pronouncement by Sarah was being flagged by Zenith's AI, each action a piece of a larger puzzle revealing a corporate culture cracking from within. In that moment of apparent helplessness, Maya stood tall, her eyes sweeping the cabin, cataloging every face while feeling the rising tide of social media beyond the fuselage. She knew that when one voice can't break the system, the power of the community could. Ethan, after hitting post, looked back at Maya and gave a slight nod, a silent affirmation. "You are not alone." The first-class cabin still felt oppressively dense, but now it crackled with a fierce energy, the energy of injustice laid bare, yet unchallenged. Maya stood calmly, her face as still as a placid lake, but in her eyes the undertow of silent resolve churned toward the surface. Sarah Miller pivoted and strode toward the cockpit, her heels tapping sharply on the thick carpet, her straight-backed silhouette and tightly bound blonde hair only adding to her icy aura. Before the door closed, she leaned in and spat out to First Officer Tom Barker, a stocky white man with a square jaw, in a tone as rough as gravel. "I'm flagging this woman. She's delaying our departure." Each word landed like a cold verdict from on high. Tom merely nodded, his eyes betraying complicity, not a flicker of dissent. Their silence formed an unspoken shield for faces that upheld the rules, even as the system they represented had rotted from within. Sarah re-entered the cabin with a composed exterior that barely masked her irritation. She tapped her mic and announced in crisp, emotionless English, "Apologies, we're resolving a seating issue. Please stand by." Her brief, polished message hid the truth and preserved the airline's image of order. But everyone in the cabin understood something was very wrong, and Maya was its target. At the back, lead flight attendant Emma Walsh, her auburn hair pristine, her uniform immaculate, held her tablet like a shield. One tap, and she stamped Maya unauthorized, without so much as a proper ID check. In Zenith's internal system, an alert lit up, passenger unauthorized, recommend removal. That alert pinged straight to headquarters, where Anna Patel monitored the live feed on a giant screen. Frowning at the notification, she replayed the cabin footage and registration logs. Within 60 seconds, Anna confirmed that every genuine verification step had been skipped. Emma had simply excluded Maya on a whim. Meanwhile, Maya felt another subtle jab from Richard White. Ah, he glanced at her, shuffled his briefcase closer, and slid a scrap of paper her way. Its message scrawled in crude handwriting. Try budget flights. Richard's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, a triumphant smirk curling his lips, as if Maya's ejection was not only justified but inevitable. No words were spoken, yet the message was crystal clear. She didn't belong here, not due to any procedural error, but because of her skin color, plain attire, and humble presence. Maya unfolded the note, refolded it gently, and met Richard's gaze with unwavering calm. She spoke no words. None were necessary, because the cabin, and now the world on social media, was documenting every look and gesture. Beneath the illusion of rules and decorum, a tide of outrage began to swell. In the distance, Ethan Collins captured the moment on video. Maya holding the paper, her expression unbroken, and prepared to post another tweet with the image. Even after being denied, she stands her ground. Discrimination isn't just policy, it's an attitude. With every passing second, tension in the cabin mounted. No one still believed this to be a mere seating mishap. This was a breach of moral trust, and the perpetrators had revealed themselves through cold, arrogant actions and a complicit system. Maya remained silent, but in that silence, surrounded by prejudice and injustice, she sounded the first toll of defiance against the entire apparatus that Sarah, Emma, Tom, and Richard wielded against her. The air in first class felt oppressively thick. Every breath slowed, tension mounting by the second. This was no longer a mere procedural hiccup. It had become an old power demonstration, where rules were twisted to preserve privilege for a few. After her cold announcement, Sarah didn't return to the cockpit. Instead, she marched straight to Maya's side, flanked by Tom Barker and Emma Walsh, forming a tight circle around her. They stopped whispering and deliberately spoke loud enough for every passenger to hear, making Maya the center of a public spectacle. Sarah crossed her arms, her tone as cold as steel, eyes fixed on Maya with undisguised hostility. We require you to present proof of priority status and financial verification immediately. If you can't, you will be asked to leave first class. That is policy. Tom Barker stepped closer, his expression tense, his words laced with threat. Policy requires immediate verification or you'll be removed. This is an aviation safety rule, no exceptions. Beneath the guise of regulations, their words were arrows aimed at Maya's dignity and very presence. You don't belong here, and any excuse, no matter how flimsy, will do to push you out. They didn't give Maya a chance to explain or actually check her ID. They only hammered on documents and proof of funds, as if first-class seats were reserved only for the rich and approved. Meanwhile, Emma Walsh silently tapped on her tablet, tagging Maya disruptive without a single question. With one touch, Maya's entire flight history was stamped as a violation in the system. Emma prepared to send a security alert, an action meant for real emergencies or threats to safety, but now weaponized to oppress and eject anyone they deemed unwelcome. Every move, from Sarah's clipped words and scornful glare, to Tom's ritualistic invocation of policy, to Emma's cold mechanical deselection, laid bare a discriminatory system cloaked in the rhetoric of rules, policies, and privileges. Amid that encirclement, Maya stood firm, even as curious stares and half-smirks from agreeing passengers bore into her. To them, Maya's difference was reason enough for expulsion. A few rows back, Richard White leaned over to an older gentleman and whispered loud enough for Maya to hear. "Does she think this is Greyhound? Zenith needs to up its standards." Each insult, each act of exclusion by the crew was no longer just a personal slight. It was a sign of systemic collusion, where old power deemed itself judge of who deserved respect. Ethan Collins, the only person still quietly filming, updated his post on X again. This time his tweet was short but powerful. "Zenith crew demands Black woman show financial proof, tags her disruptive, preps security, no ID check, this isn't policy, it's profiling." With every post and video clip, the online community erupted. Major media outlets took notice and reached out for comment. They recognized this was not merely an in-flight incident, but a replay of decades of prejudice and discrimination, unfolding in plain sight in 2025, all within a few short minutes. Back in first class, every gesture and glance had become part of a brewing storm that none of the crew could foresee, one that would soon sweep away the very system of injustice they depended on to control and exclude. No sooner had the crew's exclusionary actions ended than a new figure appeared, ratcheting the tension even higher. The divider between first class and the cockpit slid open, and Lucas Grant, Zenith's head of security, emerged. He was tall and imposing in his crisp black uniform, his gaze as cold as ice. His face betrayed no emotion. Each step he took underscored the raw authority entrusted to him at 30,000 feet. Lucas stopped beside Maya and looked down at her as if used to issuing orders. His voice was blunt and carried clearly through the otherwise hushed cabin. "Ma'am, put your device away and vacate the seat immediately. You have been flagged as unauthorized and disruptive." The cabin fell silent. What was already a tense situation instantly escalated to another level, the shift from cold words to direct action. A few passengers blinked in surprise. Others looked away awkwardly, but no one dared defend Maya. Maya remained composed, hands resting gently on her tablet, showing no sign of resistance. She met Lucas's stare with a faint, defiant smile, so slight that only the most attentive noticed the steel beneath it. Before she could respond, Lucas suddenly lashed out, snatching the tablet violently from Maya's grasp. It clattered to the floor with a sharp crack that ruptured the cabin's usual hum of air conditioning and hushed whispers. Nearby, passengers gasped in shock at the unprovoked aggression, an almost unimaginable loss of control in what's supposed to be the pinnacle of civilized service. A middle-aged woman clutching her purse tightened her arms around it, eyes wide. A man farther back let his newspaper drop to his lap. Even Richard White couldn't hide his surprise, though rather than expressing outrage, he smirked, clearly pleased by this punishment of an outsider. Sarah and Tom stood motionless behind Lucas, their eyes restless but their silence tacit approval, small nods confirming the assault had their blessing. Emma Walsh, the lead flight attendant, maintained her icy composure as she tapped out a note on her tablet. Security intervention. Passenger failed to comply. Not a movement escaped Ethan Collins's camera. His hand shook with anger as he recorded every second. Moments later, he posted the clip on X. Security lead assaults passenger. Physical contact. Zenith fail. Profiling. The shockwave spread instantly. Comments and shares exploded. Journalists, activists, lawyers, and online communities began tagging regulators and major media outlets. In the cabin, the neighboring passengers started whispering among themselves, and some even pulled out phones to film, no longer cowed by the crew's authority. The complicity of silence had broken, and the violence could no longer hide behind titles, rank, or internal policy. In mere seconds, Lucas's violent swipe at Maya's tablet had become the symbol of power abuse, the shattering of aviation ethics, and the spark of unprecedented public outrage. Yet, at the eye of the storm, Maya stayed rooted in place, head held high, eyes locked on Lucas without a hint of fear, as if daring the entire antiquated system, "Go ahead, I will not back down." The sharp clang of the tablet hitting the floor still echoed when, at Zenith's Chicago headquarters, Anna Patel, Maya's technology assistant, spotted an anomaly in the flight control system. Under the glow of her blue monitor, Anna watched every real-time data update. She saw clearly, just seconds earlier, Emma Walsh had used her high-level access to deliberately erase the log recording Maya's presence from the passenger manifest, while tagging her disruptive and unauthorized, effectively justifying Maya's removal. Anna immediately triggered lockdown mode, a special Zenith security protocol that would record every data edit and crew action from that moment onward, with no possibility of erasure or alteration. The Internal Audit A, I instantly scanned the entire flight history and issued an alert. Irregularities detected. Potential misconduct and discrimination. Simultaneously, Elena Rivers, Zenith's chief legal counsel, and a Latina renowned for her sharp mind and zero tolerance for injustice, received the notification. Without hesitation, she filed a complaint with the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, and opened an urgent channel to Maya via the secret earpiece embedded in her smart ring. Helena's voice sounded in Maya's ear, steady and steely. "Maya, do not leave your seat. All internal logs are being preserved. The world is watching. We're activating full legal protocol. They can no longer hide this." Outside the cabin, the first reports were already appearing on major outlets. From Ethan Collins' initial tweets, tech reporters and social activists had amplified the story across major platforms. Bloomberg ran the hot headline, "Black woman CEO allegedly humiliated on her own jet, discrimination in the skies." Reuters jumped in with "Zenith Aerospace under fire" as social media. Video shows passenger assault, possible profiling. The image of Maya, a petite yet steadfast figure at the center of the crew's circle, her tablet thrown aside, eyes locked on her adversaries, became an icon for millions watching live on social media. The speed at which the truth spread far surpassed anything Sarah, Emma, or anyone in the crew could have imagined. At the other end of the cabin, Sarah Miller and Emma Walsh exchanged uneasy glances. Sarah tried to maintain her composure, but her lip quivered as she observed passengers quietly filming with their phones. First Officer Tom Barker realized the situation had spun out of control. His eyes reflected concern, yet he remained silent, unwilling to challenge Emma and Lucas's actions. Meanwhile, Lucas Grant still loomed beside Maya, but his initial confidence faltered as he noticed every phone aimed at him, capturing his every word and move. On Twitter, the hashtags number Justice for Maya and number Zenith Fail shot to global trending in under 4 minutes of Ethan's video post. Influential figures in aviation, human rights organizations, and international media began demanding that Zenith and the FAA clarify what had happened, calling for an end to all forms of discrimination, overt or hidden, in modern aviation. Anna Patel expanded the system monitoring, reviewing Sarah, Emma, and Lucas's past flight records. The irregular edits and deleted logs, once buried, were now all flagged by the AI, paving the way for an unprecedented full-scale investigation. Amid the whirlwind, Maya remained seated. Even as millions watched, she chose silent dignity. She knew this fight was no longer hers alone. It had become a rallying cry for justice and conscience in the skies of today. The tension in First Class hung heavy, squeezed between the whirlwind of injustice inside and the media storm raging outside. Maya sat silently in her seat, her eyes bright with quiet dignity, while at the far end of the cabin, Ethan Collins put the finishing touches on the tweet he knew would change everything. His hand still trembling with anger, though his grip was steady. Ethan hit "Post," attaching the close-up photo of Maya lifting her chin defiantly, her gaze locked on Lucas Grant as the shattered tablet lay at her feet. The update appeared on X instantly. Breaking: woman being profiled as Dr. Maya Johnson, CEO of Zenith Technologies. She owns this flight. Within seconds, passengers' phones buzzed with notifications that his message was going viral. But the real shock came when the cabin's front-row screen abruptly switched channels to a live Bloomberg feed, flashing the headline sweeping social media: "Tech billionaire profiled on her own jet." A hush fell over everyone. Curious glances turned to stunned disbelief, then to growing confusion and awe. Sarah Miller, who had tried so hard to maintain control, paled visibly. Her pride and composure crumbled into panic and disbelief as her eyes darted first to Maya, then to Tom and Emma, seeking a lifeline or an explanation. Every confident move to brand Maya unauthorized was now clear proof of an unforgivable wrongdoing. Emma Walsh hesitated, thumb hovering over her tablet. The tags, unauthorized and disruptive, felt like fingerprints she could no longer scrub off. In an instant, she realized every action she'd taken in the past minutes was being scrutinized and archived, not only by Zenith's AI, but by millions watching online. Tom Barker, who'd merely followed orders, was equally shell-shocked. His gaze avoided Maya as beads of sweat formed on his brow. He seemed about to speak, then fell silent, knowing that any defense was now meaningless. And Richard White, the man who had earlier reveled in his status, sat frozen. He no longer lounged casually. Instead, he gripped his armrests, face drained of color. His mocking note, "Try budget flights," now felt like the heaviest mistake of his life. Around them, passengers who had watched in silence now shifted. Some clasped hands to their mouths in shock. Others looked at Maya with newfound respect, shame, or solidarity. The cabin's atmosphere transformed from tense to electrified with awakening and change. On dozens of phones, news tickers scrolled with updates. CEO of Zenith humiliated by her own crew. Racial bias on private jet. Billionaire owner fights back. Justice unfolding in real time on Zenith's flagship flight. Sarah Miller stepped back, her face ashen, eyes flicking to Maya, but this time with the look of someone teetering on the brink of losing all authority. Emma Walsh bit her lip, on the verge of protest, but no sound came out. Lucas Grant stood silent, jaw clenched, his gaze drifting away from Maya, an unspoken admission that he was too late to undo the harm. Maya remained seated, head held high. Her calm had evolved into a quiet, commanding presence. She didn't need to say a word. The tide of justice was already turning in her favor. From Zenith headquarters, Elena Rivers's voice crackled in her earpiece. "Maya, global media is confirming your status. You own this flight now. It's time to speak up. Justice is yours." The reversal happened faster than anyone could have imagined. In mere minutes, the outsider they'd tried to expel reclaimed absolute power, not with threats, but with truth and undeniable identity. The old system was crumbling, and everyone who had colluded now faced the glaring light of accountability. The atmosphere in the cabin remained as though compressed under the weight of the exposed truth. Sarah's stunned expression, Emma's bewildered gaze, Tom Barker's fearful nod, and Lucas Grant's ashen face reflected the shattered remnants of an outdated power structure. Masks that no longer concealed reality from the passengers in the watching world. Maya Johnson sat upright, then slowly stood amid astonished, respectful, and even fearful eyes of those who had turned their backs on her. Her simple outfit was no longer a symbol of outsider status, but a silent declaration of courage and self-respect. She faced Sarah Miller, the last bastion clinging to authority, and met the captain's now pale stare head-on. "You just profiled your employer in front of the world." Maya's voice was calm, but each word rang like a hammer blow against Sarah's arrogance and deceit. The row ahead held its breath. Even those who had doubted or remained indifferent leaned forward, some raising their phones to capture the moment, a nonviolent overthrow powered by undeniable truth. At that instant, Eleanor Rivers, chief legal counsel, interrupted over the cabin PA, her tone steady yet absolute. "Any action to remove Dr. Johnson is a breach of protocol and triggers legal review. The legal department is monitoring all events in real time. All crew are required to comply immediately." Silence enveloped the cabin. Only labored breaths and faint murmurs from the rear remained. Maya kept her gaze coolly fixed on the crew as she delivered each word clearly and decisively, like a final verdict. Captain Sarah Miller, First Officer Tom Barker, Flight Attendant Emma Walsh, Security Lead Lucas Grant. Your services are terminated, effective immediately. Richard White, you're permanently banned from Zenith flights. This was no emotional outburst, but the closing bell on one era and the dawn of a new standard, where those who presumed the right to judge, exclude, and humiliate would pay the price not just in their positions, but in honor and humanity. Sarah clenched her fists, her lips quivering as her protest died in her throat. Emma stepped back, clutching her tablet like a life raft, while Tom Barker bowed his head, shoulders heavy with regret and fear. Lucas Grant, the security lead who had resorted to force, stood frozen like stone, eyes fixed on the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. And Richard White, once the most arrogant figure in first class, became its loneliest passenger, forever banned from Zenith. His smug remarks about first-class standards vanished, replaced by a look of helpless despair. The passengers, initially motionless in shock, then broke into applause. Not raucous, but solemn, empathetic, and grateful. Their clapping was for Maya, and for everyone who'd been humiliated or excluded by prejudice and abuse of power. It was the first ovation for a new principle: truth and justice. In just 5 minutes, an entire system had been overturned by a woman who refused to be silenced, and by a network of technology, law, and media ready to stand on the side of fairness. The cabin atmosphere still felt like it was being crushed under the weight of the freshly exposed truth. Sarah's stunned expression, Emma's bewildered stare, Tom Barker's fearful nod, and Lucas Grant's ashen face all mirrored the shattered remnants of an outdated power structure. Masks that could no longer hide reality from the passengers and the world watching. Maya Johnson sat up straight, then rose slowly amid the awe, respect, and even fear in the eyes of those who had turned their backs on her. Her humble outfit was no longer a sign of outsider status, but a silent testament to courage and self-respect. The cabin fell deathly quiet. Passengers sensed that behind the crew's actions lay a hidden system no one had dared challenge, until now. As the initial applause died away, the big screen at the front of first class flickered to life with Zenith's internal control interface. Anna Patel, speaking live from the operations center, and Elena Rivers appeared side by side. Neither hid the gravity in their voices or expressions. Every word cut through the tension like a scalpel, peeling back the layers of secrecy that had long shielded the airline's inner workings. Anna spoke first, her tone low and precise. "We hereby announce that, following an internal audit combined with AI-driven data analysis, Zenith has uncovered multiple serious violations." Elena continued, locking eyes with the camera so the crew couldn't interrupt. "Our latest review shows that Captain Sarah Miller has been the subject of 20 discrimination complaints, primarily targeting passengers of color and women over the past 3 years. First Officer Tom Barker deliberately suppressed these complaints, altering or delaying reports so they never reached higher management or external authorities." On the screen, certified AI logs appeared. Timestamps, flight numbers, and images of complaint reports bearing signs of editing, erasure, or redaction. Beneath each entry was Tom Barker's signature with the note, "No issue detected." Anna advanced to the next section, revealing suspicious edits to the passenger manifest. Lead flight attendant Emma Walsh repeatedly altered passenger records, especially for women and people of color, resulting in some being downgraded to economy, losing priority status, or flagged as unauthorized without valid cause. We identified at least 8 illicit data alterations in just the last 2 quarters. Electronic logs scrolled by, each edit tagged with the editor's name, date, and time. Exposed before the entire cabin and the millions watching online, an inescapable public revelation. Finally, Elena turned her steely gaze to Lucas Grant. Security lead. Lucas Grant violated policy by using physical force against a passenger, namely CEO Maya Johnson. This conduct was captured on camera and demonstrates not only a loss of control, but a blatant abuse of power and discrimination. All video evidence and data files were simultaneously sent to the FAA and EEOC, America's Federal Aviation and Equal Employment Authorities, and replayed on the cabin screen so every passenger could witness them firsthand. On travelers' phones, news tickers raced by. Zenith submits full violation dossier to federal authorities. Agencies launch investigation into racial and gender bias in aviation. Sarah, Emma, Tom, and Lucas were left speechless. Sarah sank onto a seat, pale and dazed. Tom gripped the table edge, silent with shame. Emma's eyes welled with tears, her hands trembling, and Lucas bowed his head, shoulders slumped in defeat. Maya, once shunned as not up to standard, now stood as the force that shattered the hidden network, bringing truth to light for millions to see. Passengers whispered, some with tears in their eyes, others nodding in respect. They understood. This wasn't just one woman's victory, but a moment of liberation for all who had suffered injustice in the shadows for far too long. Back at Zenith headquarters, Anna and Elena confirmed, "We have locked all access accounts belonging to the individuals involved, formally requested full cooperation with the federal investigation, and committed to a comprehensive overhaul to ensure transparency, fairness, and anti-discrimination across our entire system." One by one, the protective layers shielding the old power structure were stripped away, evidence laid bare, and from this moment on, aviation would never be the same. The tension in the cabin still felt locked under the weight of that newly exposed truth. Outside the Gulfstream G650, the world had begun to roar. Within 5 minutes of the assault, social media exploded like a tsunami across every digital platform. Hashtags like Justice for Maya, Shasha Zenith Fail, and End Aviation Bias trended simultaneously on X, Instagram, and Facebook, sparking millions of comments, shares, and fiery debates about equality and justice in America's skies. Major news outlets, CNN, Reuters, Bloomberg, The New York Times, each dispatched reporters to cover the story in real time. Every update and video Ethan Collins posted went viral at breakneck speed, sending shockwaves through the aviation industry and multinational corporations alike. Passengers' phones buzzed incessantly with headlines such as FAA launches emergency probe after Zenith, CEO humiliated on her private jet. Multiple partners suspend ties with Zenith, demand transparent diversity policies. Hundreds share their own airline injustice stories, turning Maya Johnson's case into a rallying cry. Right there on the flight, the combined pressure of technology and public outrage shattered the silence that had protected the old guard. First-class passengers, once hesitant, pulled out their phones to film and live-stream, posting messages of support for Maya. Some wiped away tears, others rose to apologize for their earlier silence. One middle-aged white woman choked out, "I've never felt justice so close. I'm sorry I stayed silent." A young Latino man extended his hand toward Maya, eyes glistening. "You've given me hope. For my mom, my little sister, and all of us." Even those who had sneered or averted their eyes now lowered their heads in remorse. Richard White became a specter of shame. No one needed to accuse him. Every gaze in the cabin served as his verdict. Back at Zenith headquarters, Anna Patel and Elena Rivers worked around the clock. The audit AI continued scouring data from dozens of flights, uncovering more log manipulations and covert discrimination, forwarding everything to regulators. The FAA sent a formal directive ordering Zenith to preserve the entire crew roster intact for the investigation and to coordinate with the EEOC on a sweeping audit of race, gender, and personnel policies. The societal pressure peaked, not only on the flight crew but on Zenith itself, its strategic partners, and the entire airline industry. At the airport, hundreds of reporters, lawyers, activists, and discrimination survivors gathered, ready to witness a historic reckoning. In the cabin, Maya remained composed amidst the emotional storm. No longer a lone passenger up against entrenched power, she had become the focal point of unprecedented solidarity, awakening, and resistance. Fellow travelers stood to applaud, some with tears in their eyes. Others gently patted her shoulder, whispering thanks and admiration. Ethan Collins transcended his role as mere reporter and became an inspiration to countless people. He live-streamed Maya's moments of recognition, so millions could watch history being rewritten high above America. This was no longer just one person's ordeal. It had become an earthquake in the aviation world. Competing airlines rushed to update their policies, promise transparency, and open hotlines for discrimination reports. Activists hailed Maya Johnson as the very symbol of a new era of fairness in the skies. In first class, every handshake, every approving glance, every round of applause was a hymn to justice. Proof that in just 5 minutes, one woman's refusal to stay silent had forced an entire system to change. Social and media pressure had just peaked when the first decisive actions were taken at lightning speed. From FAA headquarters, an official bulletin was immediately released, broadcast to every news outlet, phone screen, and even the cabin monitors of the Gulfstream G650, where Maya still stood at the eye of the storm. The Federal Aviation Administration hereby suspends the entire flight crew of Zenith 510. All individuals involved will undergo a comprehensive investigation for violations of ethical, safety, and equal treatment regulations. Simultaneously, in Zenith's Operations Center, Anna Patel received an urgent call from the board of directors. An e-signed fax appeared on her screen. Zenith officially terminates its partnership with Richard White's company. a longtime preferred partner whose racist behavior and public insult of a customer on this historic flight have compelled us to revoke all his benefits, bookings, and privileges permanently. A powerful, irreversible domino effect followed. Dozens of Zenith's other partners, major financial institutions, VIP clients, and international service providers, sent emails and formal letters demanding reviews of every contract tied to anyone implicated in ethical violations, discrimination, or abuse of power. Some even withdrew from alliances outright, vowing not to cooperate unless Zenith enacts full reform. On the cabin's electronic news ticker, updates streamed in by the second. FAA reaffirms commitment to investigate all signs of discrimination and injustice in flight. Zenith establishes an independent council on fairness, transparency, and customer protection. Major carriers like SkyJet and Atlantic Blue pledge internal reforms following the Maya Johnson incident. Back at campaign control, Anna Patel smiled as Zenith's booking metrics surged. We've seen a 30% increase in new bookings in the last 24 hours. Customers worldwide are praising Zenith as the model airline of the new anti-discrimination era, not just for confronting the crisis, but for proactively embracing transparency, correcting mistakes, and inspiring change. Across social media, clips of Maya standing up to the crew, footage of Anna Patel's data disclosures, Ethan Collins' emotional cabin videos, and the hashtag number Justice in 5 minutes flooded millions of feeds. Comments evolved from simple admiration for Maya into a full-fledged movement demanding that other airlines publicly implement anti-discrimination safeguards and actively protect vulnerable passengers. In the cabin, passengers realized they'd witnessed a historic moment. Many called family and friends in awe, recounting every detail. Some embraced Maya, others shook Ethan's hand, thanking him for exposing the truth. Senior Zenith executives looked on quietly, fully aware that they must change, or be swept away by the wave of reform. The hidden network of collusion and bias had been laid bare. A new era in aviation began right there above American soil, with Maya Johnson at its center, the woman who dared to challenge every prejudice in just 5 short minutes. Even as hushed whispers still echoed through first class, passengers reeling from an ethical quake, Maya Johnson rose to her feet in the center of attention, her voice calm yet commanding. She didn't dwell on blame or individual punishment. Instead, she focused every eye forward, toward a future where fairness and human dignity become the lifeblood of an industry once proud of its elite status. Gently raising her wrist, Maya activated the live stream feature on her smartwatch, linking the cabin's entire AV system to Zenith headquarters and millions watching online. The forward monitor switched to a new logo, Zenith Equity Program, the emblem of a reform era. She announced solemnly, "Effective immediately, I am launching the Zenith Equity Program, an AI-driven oversight system for fairness and transparency that will audit every instance of discrimination or data manipulation across all Zenith flights and departments. Every customer complaint, every staff action will be logged, analyzed, and protected by tamper-proof technology." Applause erupted around her. A few tears of relief glistened on passengers' cheeks. They understood this was more than a promise. It was a real guarantee that injustice would no longer hide in the shadows. Maya continued, "Zenith is also establishing the Zenith Fund with $30 million dedicated to scholarships, training, mentoring, and career support in aviation for women, people of color, and other historically marginalized groups. We pledge to open the skies to everyone. No exclusions based on background, skin color, gender, or circumstance." Spectators sat in stunned amazement. Marcus Jordan, a young black entrepreneur who had watched silently, was invited by Maya to join the Zenith Fund Advisory Council. Ethan Collins, the man who had brought the truth to light, was personally asked to serve as the company's inspiration advisor, ensuring customers' voices never go unheard in strategic meetings. On social media, the domino effect went even further. At that moment, a former pilot under the handle Skyher Story posted a viral confession on X. "I stayed silent for decades, afraid of losing my job, because I was a woman of color in a male, white-dominated industry. Today, Maya Johnson gave me the courage to speak out about all the quiet discrimination I endured. Thank you, Maya, for standing up not just for yourself, but for all of us." In response, thousands shared their own stories of harassment, bias, career roadblocks, or forced silence in aviation and tech. Back in the cabin, passengers passed around the good news. Many volunteered to join the Zenith Equity Program as volunteers, independent auditors, or community mentors. Those who had once trembled before authority now stepped into the light to help shape a new industry standard. At Zenith's command center, Anna Patel and Elna Rivers couldn't hold back tears. Together with the AI, audit, and legal teams, they prepared the first reports for the FAA and the press, signaling change not just in principle, but in every operation, every flight, and every small action. Maya's legacy was no longer a single cabin victory. It was the start of a nationwide movement for equity in the skies, restoring faith and hope to those who had silently endured injustice. Now, Maya's eyes shone with quiet joy. Outside the window, the sky seemed broader, the setting sun's light draping the fuselage, a testament to a new era where human worth reigns supreme and justice will never again fall silent. The late afternoon sun slanted through the cabin windows of first class, casting a warm glow on every face. There was not a word spoken, but the silence was no longer one of indifference or fear. It was a silence of gratitude, of deep reflection on human dignity and justice. Then, as if moved by an invisible cue, the entire cabin rose in unison and applauded. There was no raucous cheering or shout of triumph, just firm, measured claps echoing like the voice of justice reclaiming a sky once closed to fairness. An elderly woman leaned toward her neighbor and whispered, "Thank you, Maya. Today, you made me believe that things can change." Maya Johnson quietly retrieved her tablet, paid no mind to the looks of regret from those who had turned away moments before, and straightened her simple blouse. She stepped off the plane not as the woman who had been humiliated, nor as a victim of a hidden system, but as an icon of transformation, the woman who had made an entire industry take off again on the wings of equity. As Maya descended the air stair, dozens of reporters, passengers, and airline staff who had followed the story on their screens watched her with newfound respect. No one asked about her net worth or status. They wanted to know what had given her the courage not to back down against a complicit system. Back at Zenith's headquarters, hundreds of emails, thank you messages, and personal confessions poured in. The PR team received video testimonials from female pilots, engineers, and technicians of color, people who had once been sidelined, now daring to share their real journeys and battles. Across every major news ticker, Maya's image, standing composed in first class with a steadfast gaze, became the defining symbol of the year. The hashtag number 5 minutes for justice spread like wildfire, spurring thousands of companies, schools, local governments, and other industries to begin real conversations about fighting discrimination and building transparent, equitable systems. That single day, just 5 minutes, changed the history of a company and ignited a wave of fairness and openness, not only in aviation but throughout society. That evening, at the press conference, a reporter asked Maya what message she wanted to leave everyone. She simply smiled and drew on her own experience. Justice doesn't need to shout. Sometimes it only takes 5 minutes and a woman who refuses to be erased. Those words became an immortal quote, printed on posters in schools and offices, displayed at social justice conferences, and embraced as a rallying cry by young women and anyone once forced into the shadows of prejudice. From that day on, every Zenith flight begins with the announcement, "We commit to protecting the dignity and equal rights of every passenger," because history has shown that sometimes it only takes 5 minutes and one brave person to change everything. What do you think about the power of just 5 minutes facing injustice, and one woman's courage to stand up against an entrenched system? If you were in Maya Johnson's shoes, would you have the resolve to defend yourself and spark a movement for change? Share your thoughts, personal story, or message in the comments below. Every voice can inspire someone out there. And if you believe this story deserves to be heard, please like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of justice and truth. Thank you for watching.